Hey everyone, welcome to the video. I'm Simon. Today we're going to talk about tearing down an old power supply for parts. Some of these parts I've seen on eBay for anywhere from $7 to $30 depending on quantity and type. Just a word of caution before you do this. It's advisable, especially with anything that's been plugged into 120, to take an alligator clip and some resistors like this and just go around from ground to the capacitor positive or across the capacitors. Just make sure there's no residual charge. Okay? Be safe and don't do this unless you know what you're doing. And these parts are for hobby use only. Don't put them into anything that you're relying on because they may be damaged by the extraction process. Okay, let's get started, guys. So here's the first part of the power supply teardown and harvesting. DC 1300 watts. Taking a look at the label, we can see that it's 38 to 75 volts, 46 amps in, and 12 volt 108 amp output, and 5 volts 1 amp output. Not very useful to me, and I don't know if it works. So here it is with the bottom panel off. We got some nice little Phillips head screws. Here we can see into the end of the supply, so it's looking promising. There's some nice capacitors in there. Looks like I'm going to have to take the screws out of the printed circuit board to get the top panel off. You can see now we have the bottom and side panel off, and it looks like there's two printed circuit boards connected together, and I'm going to have to pull out this one in order to get at the other one and to get at both of them. Okay, so there you go. You can see that we now have both circuit boards unpacked. There's some nice looking parts on here. There's a nice big chunky looking capacitors here. That looks like well, I can't really see, 680 microfarad, 250 volts. There's some nice inductors, nice heat sink here, and some nice large power transistors which could be harvested. Over on the other side here, bonus, there are two muffin fans, more inductors, some capacitors. And over on the side here we have, looks like, some more digital stuff. So yeah, it's looking really good for parts. Here's an interesting part. Looks like it's a relay, mostly copper, and it's covered by a cardboard shell glued into place. I don't think I've ever seen that before. And here, if we pull off this plastic cover, underneath there's some nice heat sinks with large chunky looking power transistors, and it's either a couple of inductors or transformers. I'm not sure what those guys are yet. So here we see the board completely removed from the chassis. Should be reasonably easy to desolder some parts. The connections are fairly large. There's not much surface mount. Same thing with this board. It's completely detached from the chassis. There are a few surface mount devices on the back of this one, and then we have the fans, which should be easy to get out, and a nice collection of Phillips head machine screws. As you can see, we've now disassembled the fan assembly from the chassis. I'm not sure how useful these will be because they say on them 12 volts 1.2 amps, so that's almost a power supply in itself just to run this fan, so it must be pretty looks like it's probably a pretty powerful muffin fan. Still nice to have.
Here you see a time lapse of some of the part removal. I'm using a screwdriver for some leverage, a small soldering iron so I don't damage anything, and some braid for solder removal.
Okay, so there you go, some large parts harvested from the power supply. some MOSFETs that are about $6, some large 250 volt capacitors that are anywhere from sort of $7 to $30 on eBay. Okay, Nala, parts identification. Which is the capacitor? Good girl. Okay, transistor. Good girl. Okay, treat. Yeah, good girl. Okay, have the treat.